to battle threats to our security.
On September 11th, 2001, 24 Canadians were murdered in the al-Qaeda attack on the World Trade Center. The death of al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, reported today by President Obama, secures a measure of justice for these Canadians and their families. Bin Laden's death does not end the threat of international terrorism. Sadly, others will take his place. But this does remind us why Canadian Armed Forces personnel have been deployed to Afghanistan to deny al-Qaeda and organizations like it the use of Afghanistan, where the 9/11 attack was conceived and planned. Through their operations there to cut off terror at its root, our men and women in uniform have made an enormous contribution to Canadian security at home and abroad. Here, dedicated security officials have worked tirelessly and with success to prevent similar attacks in Canada. Protection of the public is the first and most important duty of government. Canada receives the news of the death of Osama bin Laden with sober satisfaction. We will continue to stand firm with our allies against the threat of global terrorism. Thank you.
The al-Qaeda leader was killed in a U.S. targeted operation in a mansion outside of Islamabad, Pakistan, with the cooperation, Obama was careful to note, with the cooperation of the Pakistani government, along with apparently several members of his family. The U.S. now has his body and has confirmed its identity as bin Laden. He, of course, was the mastermind of the 9/11 terror attacks in New York City and Washington that killed 3,000 people, including 24 Canadians. American forces have been on the hunt for him since that day, almost 10 years ago. Even before Obama made the dramatic announcement, word of bin Laden's death prompted an impromptu gathering outside the White House. People there celebrating with cheers by singing the Star-Spangled Banner. We take a look now at the crowd. It started out just a couple of dozen people. It looks like there are hundreds of people now who have gathered to try and share this moment. There was a plane that went down just outside Washington by the Pentagon. Of course, they were touched personally by this. Every American, this is a moment every American knows exactly where they were the day that those planes hit. And this is another moment that they will remember. This will probably be seen as the greatest achievement of the Obama administration. He has made it clear that his intelligence, that the CIA, that he authorized them to go out and find him, that they found him, and then he authorized a targeted hit by perhaps special forces in Pakistan. To talk more about this now, I'm joined on the phone by Brian Stewart. So we've seen the reaction both in New York City at Times Square. People are rallying. This is, Brian, you've covered al-Qaeda and the war in Afghanistan. There is so much excitement in the United States tonight, but also we're getting word from the U.S. State Department. They're sending out warnings that the embassies around, American embassies around the world, need to be careful. This is, it's partly the end of the story, but perhaps the beginning of another different chapter. Brian?
Well, there's no doubt that al-Qaeda will have to try and strike back. After all, this is a major defeat for them after a long series of defeats over the last few years in which they've had thousands of their operatives arrested. They've missed out on the whole Arab Spring uprising and been a pivotal player in that. They've been more or less on the sidelines, and now they've lost their leader, their inspired leader, for well over 15 years now. So they will strike back where they can, and I'm sure this is well taken into all the calculations. The real surprise here, I think, that a lot of the allies the Americans are going to have, and when they express their delight, is there are many surprising things that we didn't think could happen here. The Americans get an intelligence lead back in August and are somehow able to keep it out of the pages of the Washington Post or the media. They're able to work successfully, it seems, with the Pakistan intelligence apparatus for once, without a major betrayal taking place. That they skillfully are able to get an attack team of special forces in to conduct this operation, which is not something the Americans have been terribly successful doing for many, many years now. And they pull it off without apparent any casualties to themselves. And it should be noted that Obama was always surrounded by a very heavily armed and very intense bodyguard apparatus himself. So when they mention a firefight, it probably was a significant firefight. So a lot of people, including Al-Qaeda itself, I think, are going to be a bit surprised by the degree of success the Americans were able to pull off there. And it will be a major morale booster, which may have a good deal of political import down the road.
All right, Brian, so much to talk about. This is going to be a story that's going to carry out over the next few days. We're seeing more and more people pouring into the streets in Washington. Just thank you so much. And we have to actually say goodbye to Manitoba and points east now, because we're going to rejoin regularly scheduled programming. It's an amazing story. For viewers there who want to follow the story, we will have continuing coverage on CBC News Network.